Okay, I'm glad you're here this morning. Also, it's a special morning because we have Rhonda Jackson with us from Destino del Reino outside of Suatepec, Honduras, and she's going to be sharing testimony about how she got there, what the Lord has done in and through her over the years, and we're excited about that. So you give her your undivided attention, as I know you will, and then just put your hands together and welcome Rhonda here, okay?
Feel nervous. It's always hard in a group like this because some of y'all have heard the story a million times. Some of y'all have lived the story, and so should I really start at the beginning for everybody? But anyway,
Just talk a little bit louder.
Okay. Well, Grace has a big part of my life here because honestly, I had lots of strongholds in my life through years and lots of things. Not only that I had participated in, but I also had, lots of abuse and stuff in my life. And so I didn't even know I grew up in a Christian home, but I had a lot of struggles. So then we came to Grace, and when the Holy Spirit got free here, then a lot of stuff started manifesting in me. So I went through a year and a half of deliverance sessions pretty much here. And so I have, because of Pastor Wade and Ann and all the ladies that helped me through all those struggles, I feel like all the fruit that I have is theirs too. So anyway, so I left here after getting set free. And there was, how it started, how I knew about Honduras was because Pastor Wade and the group from Grace were going every February for several years before I even knew anything about. I didn't know where Honduras was even in the world at the time. And I had prayed about missions when I was in college, almost went to Sudan and got accepted, and I knew it wasn't the right thing to do back then. But so Pastor Wade came back from the trip to Honduras one February, and I guess I was playing the piano at Shannon's wedding, and you were doing the thing, and he came up and he said, "When I was in Honduras, I knew you were supposed to be there, so next year, even if I have to pay your way, you have to go to Honduras with me." And so the next February, I signed up on the trip, and as soon as I got there, it was like I didn't speak Spanish. It didn't make any sense, but I loved it so much, and I loved the people. We were down in Choluteca that I just really didn't even want to go back home. And so I knew that the Lord was drawing me there. So I got back to Grace that week, and I guess a couple of weeks passed, and I went in Pastor Wade's office, and I said, "I think I'm supposed to be in Honduras." And so he said, "Well, we don't have anybody to take you to because the people that took us there were not permanent." And so he said, "Let's just pray for an open door." And so a lady that used to go to church here was moving back to Honduras, and she said I could live with her. And so I kind of just gave up my car and my house and left. And I don't even know, I was telling one of my kids today, I don't even know how I had the courage to do that because I'm not a brave person, but looking back, it just was so obvious I was supposed to do it. It was really easy for me in that sense. And so then I got there, and she and her daughter were only speaking English to me, and so I asked her if I could go live where her family lived, and so that's where it took me to Hocon Yoro to live. And I lived in the village with the people for about 2.5 years. And during that time, I kept asking the Lord what I was supposed to be doing here. I knew I was learning Spanish, and I loved the people there too, but I could pray with them and stuff, but I couldn't really share gospel with them much. And so I spent 2 years learning the language, kind of, not that good yet still, but enough. And so then as I was praying, I was asking the Lord, what does he want me to do here? And there were kids that we heard about in Hocon that actually were dying of starvation. And so as I was praying one night, the Lord showed me that I was supposed to start a children's home. And I had done that in Texas. I'd raised kids for years in a children's home before, and I really hadn't thought I was ever going to do that again. And I was really wanting to do discipleship and evangelism with women and stuff, but it was so clear. What I thought was a detour from missions, the Lord was actually getting me ready to be with these children. And so I asked the Lord to confirm that I was hearing right. And that morning, the next morning, I was living with this friend Shoshi, and the mayor, who had never talked to me, walked up and told her to tell that gringo if she'll start a orphanage, that I'll help her. And so I was like, that was what God had told me to do the night before, and so that was very confirming. Then they started to try to find me land in Yoro, and it wasn't working out. So I came back to the States for just a short while. And while I was here, a friend of Sue Reamer's, she had just mentioned that she had a friend that was supposed to build a children's home in Honduras, and the friend was a builder in Brazil. And so in the middle of the night, Ann and all them were at a dinner for me to leave the next day back to Honduras, and Sue walks up and says, "You got to call this lady. She's a builder in Brazil, but she needs to talk to you." And so when I called her, she said that she was up all night the night before. All she had heard from Sue Reamer was that some friend of hers was going to build a children's home in Honduras, and she was half mad. She said, "I work in Brazil, but the Holy Spirit won't leave me alone. He told me to go build that children's home in Honduras." So the land was given to us in Siwanapeki. And it wasn't where I was looking for it, but it was perfect for us. And then the builder came and built it, but that's been a long time ago. And then I started praying for the Lord. I told everybody to pray way back then that there was thousands and thousands of kids that don't have food and are hurting in Honduras. And I told him to just pick leaders, pick kids that he plans to do something with. And so my kids, and we say, every time somebody says they have a little child for us to take, I always say yes, and God closes the door every time if they're not picked. And it's so obvious, so make me cry thinking about my kids. But anyway, so we started, anyway, should I tell about all the well and all that stuff? Oh, okay, it's long. Honduras, Destino is just pure miracles, everything about it. Right about the time that the Lord was showing me to build the children's home, he was also starting to convict me that I was not supposed to. Grace was sending me some money in another church, and he told me to tell everybody to quit sending the money. It was going to be his thing. And so that was I got like 3 confirmations before I told you not to send any more money, because I had to hear from the Lord about that one. But the first month where they didn't send me money anymore, we had to build the slab, and every penny came in. It was more money than I'd ever gotten through churches or anything. And it was just because God told me he was going to do it, and I had to wait on him. And that was the beginning of waiting on him all these years, because we don't have any promises. We don't belong to one church. It's just individuals that get, we've had people say their son's cousin had gone, or their son's friend had gone to Destino 3 years ago, and God woke me up in the night and told me to send my tax refund. It would be crazy stories like that God just always provides for us. And it's all been miraculous. And in fact, Pastor Wade was there a few years ago when he said, so exactly how much does it cost? Do you remember that? He said, after all these years, he said, about how much does it cost a month to run this place? And I had never added it up, because there's no reason to do a budget. We never know what we're going to have, and we eat. We always never miss our food, and we always pay when something happens. The money's there miraculously. And when I added it up, it was like $24,000 a month. That wasn't for anything else. No medical emergencies or extra supplies. It was just salaries and bus gas and school teachers, anyway. And then I got scared, because I've been trusting him all this time, and then all of a sudden I was like, I don't have that much money in the bank today. So anyway, but that's how faithful God has been, always, forever. When I panic once in a while, I go, he's not going to stop today, and if he stopped giving today, it means he's done. And I'm not going on without him, so I guess we're finished with the work here. And so it kind of gets me back on track to just trust him. And so anyway, we started out that I started, these kids are all from the very beginning years, and have all grown up loving Jesus and stuff. But I started out with probably just 8 little toddlers, and Blanca is the oldest in the family, and she was 5, so we had to take her to the village up down the road to school. And I had picked up all the neighbors. We had a van and picked up all the neighbors. So we had like 25 of them. I think Sammy was in a little baby carrier. And we'd all drive them to school every day. And so I started praying about having a school. But, you know, I'm not an administrator. I'm not naturally gifted in any of those things that you would think somebody would be in business, or I'm even kind of dingy, so real dingy. And so anyway, so I was already over my head. I'm raising kids in a country and having to figure everything out and how to do things in another country. Don't speak that good a language anyway. But I started praying. I said, we need a school for the kids. And so I said, okay, Lord, if this is from you. And so we went to the director of education in town that day, and it was like I wanted to put the brakes on. God was just opening the door for a school, and it scared me. And so, because he said, oh, this is like 3 months before school was supposed to open, he said, oh, you can start. And well, I guess it was back then, it was December, and school started in February. And he said, you can start in February. And I said, oh, not this February. Like, I'm not ready for that. And he goes, no, I'll help you find the teachers. I'll get you the books. And so just like that, my cousin that I hadn't seen for years made all the uniforms. We started with 34 kids, and we picked all the kids, the neighborhood kids that couldn't go to regular schools, because they didn't have shoes. So they bought another Sunday school class in Houston, bought all their shoes. And I mean, we started school on time, and it was so incredible. Oh, a group from First Baptist came and built little desks, and so then I was like, okay, I guess we're supposed to have a school. And by the first year was over, it was like, okay, Lord, if we're supposed to have a school, I guess we have to keep growing. So this was in our little pavilion room. We had made it close to our house, and so I put on a napkin. And I said, I guess if we had a school, what would it look like? So I drew it on a napkin, and then Steve Clifton of Clifton Constructions, he put it in blueprints. And a friend from college, her brother had for years had a home medicine company, home care thing in Michigan, and he had been saving all the money for years for whenever the Lord showed him how to use the profits. And he jumped in her car for a ride and saw my email on the floor. I hadn't seen her in 25 years. And he said, what's this? And she said, you remember my roommate at Bryan? And he said, she's got a children's home, and they're going to start a school. And they put all that money in to build the first school. And so Steve Clifton kind of started crying when he came back over 8 months later. He said, my best workers on my best machines could not have built this school in 8 months like it turned out. And it just kept growing. We took one grade at a time, and now we've had 6 years of graduates, 6 years of high school graduates. So we started at first grade and moved them all up and moved them on out, and it's been amazing. And
how many students, Rhonda?
Now there's 305 this year.
305.
Mm-hmm. And we deciding to double the kindergarten and double the first grade. Just start doubling it up, because first there's so many people need to know Jesus, but then these people don't have a chance to get a good education that live around us. And so we have the room, so we're just going to go ahead and double up. So now we had 120 new students this year, besides all the ones we already had. So it's going to grow real fast now. But so, just to tell you some of the miracles, one of the first ones was that I had lived in Hocona. We didn't have lights most of the time, and we didn't have any clean water or anything. And so I was used to living like that. And so when we started out with the kids were babies, we just had water brought in, and we had a little generator for lights at night if you had to fix, warm up their bottles or something. And so our generator broke one day, and the guy that was working with me, he said, do you want to just ask God to give us electricity? And I said, do you know how much that costs? Because he wasn't with me when I had got an estimate. It was going to be over $25,000 to bring electricity to us out that far from town. And he said, well, do you want to just at least ask God? And I said, oh, I guess so. So we prayed that day, and within a couple of weeks, some friends from Texas surprised us and brought us our first van. And they walked in the door and they said, we've been thinking while we were on the road that it's time for electricity here, and we're like, I can't believe it, because they had been there before and nobody mentioned electricity. And I said, we just looked at each other, and they didn't have the money to do it. They just were saying, how do we get this started? And so we had a meeting with the engineer, and he said, why don't you start looking for copper wire, because they didn't make it in Honduras. So we had a little meeting with him. So they decided to go back to Houston and see, if they could find it, on discount or something, and start raising money. Just start with the cable. So 2 weeks after they left, I got this email from them, and it said, in the history of the Houston Power and Light Company, they had never given anything away to anyone, and they had decided to send us everything. And they sent us over $30,000 of the transformer, all the wiring, and they paid for the shipment. And then while they were all talking about it in the company, the union found out, and they decided to send all their own linemen. And so, and it wasn't like we were this big school or big ministry. We had like 10 kids in a little house, and the Lord gave us all that just because we asked. So I learned a lot. After that, I always started asking. Even if he wants to say no, I'm not going to not ask, because we had 3 years without electricity just because I didn't think to ask him. Then another thing that came right after that was we had, when I was in Hocone still, and I would come back while they were building the house back and forth, and 3 or 4 days, because people had told us there's no water. In those mountains, there's no water. All the main diggers, or what do you call them, excavators or well diggers, said there's not. The company said there's no water there. And so, like 3 days in a row, I was reading, and I had lots of hours because I didn't have any friends in Hocone, or I didn't speak the language. So I was like, spent a lot of time reading in the Bible. And 3 different days in a row, the words "abundant water" showed up in my scripture. I was once in a minor prophet, once in Psalms, and once in Jeremiah, I think. And it was like it just stuck. I was abundant water, and I thought, I don't know if God's telling me that. I didn't want to just decide it was God, but I just thought it was weird. I even looked in the back to see if it was in there more than I thought. Maybe it's everywhere, the abundant water phrase, and in the concordance. But so I called my friend in Siwanapecky. She said, I think it's God. And so that was like 1.5 years before the guy that I was working with, he found a group from way down south that was a big professional well diggers, and he started talking to him, and he said, they said the same thing. We know exactly what you're talking about. There's no water up there, and so he said, well, we really want to go ahead and try. And they said, well, we didn't want to bring all our equipment up there when we know there's no water. So if you can have $10,000 in the bank and sure that you can pay us, then we'll go ahead and come. And I was like, we're living from day to day. I was like, $10,000 was so ridiculous for us to think about. So I just put an email out and just said, I don't know what God wants us to do. So my mom and dad, their RV had broken down in Alabama a few years before, and this couple that picked them up had stayed in contact. And this guy I still never seen before, still haven't seen. He said that he and his wife would do a matching gift for the next 2 weeks, up to $5,000, and the money came just like that. So the drillers came out the whole time, really negative, telling us that there's no water here, y'all being foolish, throwing this water and the money away. So I was like, okay, we just have to trust the Lord. So they started digging, and about 3 days later, they all started yelling, we got water. And so we were all excited for a while, and they said, and then I finally said, is it, how much is it? And they said, it's about 6 gallons a minute. And so I don't know what that is. I thought, how many times can you flush the toilet even for 6 gallons a minute? So I said, well, there's going to be several houses here, and I don't know if I knew there was a school I can't remember when the timing. I don't think I knew it was a school, but I just said, we're going to have several houses here. And they go, oh no, this is just enough for your house. But you're just lucky there's anything. They said, there's not supposed to be any water here. So you're just doing good to have this. And I was like, oh, and then that's why it mattered that the Lord told me abundant water, because I said, there's still more money in the bank. And I said, and God said abundant water. And so I don't think this is abundant. I said, so keep drilling. And they just thought I was nuts. And they drilled for another couple of days or 1.5 days. I can't remember how long now, but And they were mad at me, thinking I was crazy the whole time and not being satisfied with the little water we found. And then they started hollering one day, and they had found, they didn't even, it wasn't measurable. They said there was more than 50 gallons a minute coming out of there. It was a river. It was pure, so we could drink it out of the fountains, which is real unusual in Honduras. You can drink your water out of the faucet, and it was just abundant water, just like God promised. So, but he's God is so faithful. I've really learned to listen to him a lot. I learned that from Pastor Wade again, how to hear his voice. But it's so important because he doesn't tell you real logical things. Usually doesn't tell. Usually, if it's logical, it's me. No, not really. Not very logical either. But if it makes sense, it's not always him. But he's just done amazing things, and so the school has grown. We have one day, the thing he told me in the night was that if the parents didn't come to church and didn't start growing spiritually, that we're not going to be able to do much with these students, because their parents would, like, if they were in trouble, they come to the office and they want their kids to have this free education where they get uniforms and get fed every day and they're loved, and so they would defend their kids instead of helping us. And so the Lord told me to tell all the parents that they had to be at church every week or their kids couldn't stay in school. And so I was like, oh, I can't believe God's making me do this, because I thought we'd probably lose half our kids. And we didn't lose one student. Every parent started coming. I think we had to go buy 450 more plastic chairs that week, and we bought another bus. And so we started busing 5 buses of people in every week on one night a week. And the parents, then I thought they would come mad, and they came with joy. And it turned out to be the most wonderful thing. And so we still have the requirement, and the parents, we've seen a lot of difference, because we used to have to kick probably 15 to even 20 kids out a year, just because we would wait till they got all the way to high school, from kindergarten all the way up. If they get up to the 9th grade and they don't show any interest in spiritual things, then we just invited them to go to another school, because we said, this is a training center for Christian leadership, and there's nothing wrong with you. We love you, but you're just not interested, and so we need to have you move on. So I think the last few years, we've hardly had anybody have to leave, and I really believe it's because the parents are changing spiritually too. One of the neat things that just happened recently in the last year was we were always in soccer. My kids all play soccer all their lives, and we have soccer games through the school, because then we can provide it free, and the kids get opportunity, and then of course they're required to come to church too, so that keeps them under the word. But we didn't have, for COVID, we didn't have any church. We didn't have, Honduras really closed down. I mean, last week was the first time that they didn't take our temperature at the grocery store. So everybody wears masks. They closed how many months was it? We couldn't go anywhere. 8? I mean, it was like your number, like on the end of your number of your identity, your passport or your ID, whatever digit, if it was 0 up to 9, you got 1 day a week to go. So then there's nobody left on the weekends. It was completely closed. And so you could go to the store every 12 days. And so it was closed. So we couldn't do anything. We had no church, and we didn't have ball games or anything. So my kids, finally, we found out about this new group starting a ball club in town. And so my boys went to join it. And it turned out we needed to have our own teams, and so we're not with them anymore. But during the time, just a few months they were in it, I was in the States, and was it you, Josue, or Sammy? Well, anyway, they said the coach asked them to go to church with them, and they loved it. And they said, we need to try that. So we packed all the kids. I have 24 altogether, and we packed everybody up and went to church. And I couldn't believe it. I hadn't heard good teaching in Honduras like that ever. The whole church, there was probably only maybe 40 people when we went, 45 people, and they're all trained leaders. It wasn't like people attending the church. They were all from a group called Serve Hope, and it was like all humanitarian, even though they're Christian. And Pastor Christian was told by the Lord to start a church, and he couldn't figure out why, because there's churches around. And so they built up all this leadership, and I've never seen so many men leaders. And we walked in and then they started talking about they needed a place to meet. I mean, the Lord just put the whole thing together, because here we're without any pastor, and they are a group of leaders not knowing what they're supposed to do with this, and the Lord has so beautifully put it together. They have just completely taken on the leadership of all those. There's probably 800 families now, 800 not families, 800 people if you had everybody come to church on one night. We've got them divided in a fourth right now because of COVID still, but they just know they're supposed to disciple these people. And I used to go to church because I already got kids in the house, and we got groups, and we have, I'm in charge of all the finances, all this stuff I have to do. And then I can't do the discipleship. And there's like 800 people there sitting in church, and nobody's following up. And it was just always felt like this burden to me that I need to be doing more with these people, and I don't have any more time or energy to do it. And they just felt like God grew their little leadership up for this harvest, for these people. And that has been the most amazing thing. They've had activities. They have so much energy. They're so prepared to do it, to really teach the word and stuff. And so what just happened on Wednesday night, I need prayer because Pastor Christian came over last couple weeks ago, and he said, this is breaking my heart. He actually cried. He said, I can't connect to 800 people. He said, this is not how they grow spiritually, just come in for a sermon. And I said, I know, but how do we do this? And so we have decided and prayed about it. And so Wednesday night's the first night. So they're divided in about 200 people each fourth week. So that once a month, everybody, the 800 people will come to church. So they have so many leaders. They're sending 12 leaders, and we're going to break all those 200 people into groups, small groups, and quit having just teaching. And their leaders are so, good about following up and calling the people. And so Wednesday night's going to be probably pure chaos when they get to church and everybody has to go somewhere to groups. But I am so excited. I think this is going to make a world of difference in these people. I think they're going to really start growing spiritually and feeling loved, because they just go through a lot of heartaches and a lot of very sad things, and there's nobody praying with them. And so that starts Wednesday night. I'm missing it, but the next week I'll be there for the next week of chaos. But that's a big prayer request, that this will go, we'll be able to organize it. And Pastor Christian's brother is going to do the youth, and they'll meet every week. And then we have Sunday school classes are for children every week, and our teachers are going to help, so that it will just be the adults that have once a month a small group. And then I think we're going to have a prayer group that if you want to come to church more than once a month, then you can go into the library at school and pray. But I'm real excited about what God's doing there, and how Pastor Wade fits and all that was so great, because Christian is just a sweet, humble guy, and and they got 5 pastors, and I love their accountability to each other for each other's time with the Lord and marriages and everything. And so they've really made each other strong in the Lord together. And so I said, my pastor, I usually have him come and teach a Bible conference. I said, do y'all want to be part of that? Because yeah. And I think he just wanted to please me, kind of. And so he didn't know who Pastor Wade was or anything. And then Pastor Wade and his friend Kevin got there, and I think Christian just gave him, he was thinking, I'll go meet with him for an hour or something. And then he starts taking notes, and Pastor Wade was overwhelmed with Pastor Wade's knowledge of the word. And he said, us Hondurans, we've never been taught like this. And I remember even in one of the messages, it was you or Kevin talking, and one of you mentioned so the pastors on the front during the conference, Pastor Wade, they're taking notes faster than anybody. It was so precious. They're just so excited to learn. And I remember one of you mentioned crowns, and then Christian said, would you tell us what the crowns are? And he said, we'll learn that later. But it was like they just want to learn all the stuff they've never gotten a chance to do. So Pastor Wade can tell you more about that. But out of that, I'm so excited because starting in 2 weeks they're going to do quarterly pastor training. And so Pastor Christian's already got 15 pastors coming to this one, but it's going to grow into pastor training. And he's got lots of pastors under his authority or his influence because of the other ministry, and he's so excited to grow like this. Anyway, it's just fun to watch. And the best thing about all that growth is that I don't have to do it. It's like before things would grow, like the school and then the church, and it was like I just kept feeling more and more like I'm not enough. I can't do this, and there's not enough helpers, and now it's going to explode in growth, and I don't even have to do any more except assist, attend the small groups. So that helps me a lot to know. But and you can pray for all my kids in college. That's a really there's probably a lot of people think that I'm kind of crazy by now because God just started telling me I was supposed to send my kids to Brian. And that took a big miracle because I didn't even want my kids in the United States. Ever since they're little, people would come and say, oh, maybe you can send your kids to the United States to go to college. And I was like, I would never want them there. It's just defiant. And it's, the culture's different. I mean, not that Honduras is very immoral, but they don't have some strange things like America does. I just don't want my kids to be exposed to all that, although they probably know more than I thought they knew anyway. I found out later. I thought they didn't know anything about anyway, because we don't watch movies like that, but I guess people talk. Anyway, so I would never wanted them in America, but it was one night, I guess it was probably because Cesar started saying, well, if I don't get on the team here, then, and he was 18, and he says, the coaches said that I should go to San Pedro and try to play on their soccer team, and I panicked. I mean, my kids, I don't know what I thought. I thought they were all going to stay little. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just panicked, and for 2 nights I kept thinking, they can't just leave, and they gotta, I don't know. And I just battled with the Lord, and those 2 nights I really had to give all my kids up to the Lord again. And it was so crazy. I didn't just give them up, and I think it just came out of my mouth. I think Cesar and I he was in the front seat, and we were driving, and I said, I think I was in the car, and I said, Cesar, would you, if I could get you a scholarship at my college, would you even want to go to college in the United States? And he said, oh, yeah, Tia. And I was like, okay. So that started the Bryan College thing, and I called, I wrote a letter, and I thought, this is crazy. I mean, I felt like God was leading the whole thing because I thought, these coaches are going to think I'm crazy because I want to see if Blanca could go too and play on the girls' team. And I thought, these coaches are going to think I'm crazy. But I said, I wanted my kids to see, I don't know if Honduran kids, I don't know soccer in the United States and soccer in Honduras, but he's great in Honduras, so what is, and so I started thinking we'd have to all 3, this is before I thought the other kids were going, I said we'd all have to 3 get visas and get permission, and that takes weeks and months, and then pay for all of us to go to Brian to even try out. And I said, can I just pay y'all's tickets and y'all come here and try out, the kids? Well, ends up that one coach didn't come, but the men's coach and he brought his wife, and they had been missionaries in Ukraine. They were only there 5 days, I think. They fell in love with my kids. They fell in love with the ministry. That's the same heart they have, is to raise up leaders. And they already want all my kids to try out they already have, Sammy's only 16, and so they already said they want him to play there too. But anyway, they're looking to all my children, and so they gave all 5 of them some scholarship. And but it costs money. The scholarship is not, even Cesar's got the biggest one, and it's still thousands of dollars more a month. And here I told you how we don't have any money every month other than what we need. And God, they're finishing the 2nd semester, and we paid everything up till now. And Josue and Carlitos came in now, so I had 3 in January, and now there's 5 of them there. Jonathan plans to come in August, and then Sammy in next January, and Emily the next January. And I was like, who in the world sends 8 kids to college at once? But I know God wants me to do that. And things just kept opening up. Like I would go, okay, God, is this you? And so I didn't really like the president the last few years. He doesn't have the same godliness that we had before at Brian when I was there. And so I was praying about that, and then I opened the alumni page, and he's retired. And then then they have a new president, and I was like, oh, okay, I hope he's good. And everybody's saying, oh yeah, he was great. He went to Brian. He's a godly man. Well, then I talked to my nephew, and he was out in California, and he said, hey, Aunt Rhonda, that new president at Brian, he went to Camp Hope with us all our lives. He knew Mom, and he's friends with all of us. And so I was like, oh, this is weird. He's got connections to us, and he's become a sweet friend. And so, but the weirdest thing was and then the Lord's just started providing the money, obviously. But one day I always do this. I wake up and I go, would you just give me one more confirmation? Because I'm panicking. And he's so sweet. I think that's what he means in James 1:5 when he says he doesn't upbraideth, you just keep asking for more. Because if I'm doubting, I just go, one more confirmation, one more confirmation. So this time, this is kind of a crazy story, but I said, Lord, would you just show me one more time that they're really supposed to be there? Because my biggest fear was I would get them all excited about going and then get there, and then I couldn't, the money didn't come in. I had to know it was God so that we could count on him. And so the next day or day after that, there's this publication from Brian that comes out quarterly, and this lady writes this thing in the back about the history. Her father was the first president of Brian. It's way back, in the 30s. And so I thought it was just like out of a historical novel about Brian or something. I didn't know that if the lady was writing now. So I was reading it, and it says that her dad, the first president at Brian, had grown up. He was born in Belpre, Kansas. And I was like, Belpre, Kansas, this is the craziest thing. And so I wrote to the lady at Brian that's in charge of alumni, and I said, are those articles being written now, or is this from a book? And she said, no, the lady lives in Knoxville. And I said, well, would you tell her, would you write to her and tell her, I said, this doesn't make any sense, this won't mean anything to anybody else, but I said, she said her dad was from Belpre, Kansas, and I said, all my cousins grew up in Belpre, Kansas, and I said, the population's only 200. And I said, this is so weird. And so she is alive in Knoxville, and she's got like so much influence at Brian. And every time they have any private, big celebrations or anything, she's like one of the first people. Well, she never had any children, and she never had any siblings. And so we started talking, and my cousin, one of my youngest girl cousin lives in her family homestead in Belpre, Kansas. And we have cousins that grew up together, and we've just had so much fun talking. We talk every week. Well, as soon as we became good friends like this, she wanted to meet my kids. She fell in love with them, and she's given, I don't know how many thousands of dollars towards their tuition. She sends them spending money. She calls them our kids. And I don't even know how that's all going to fit together, but it was like, okay, Lord, this is too freaky. He just has this whole thing, and I'm going, he had it planned clear back there that my cousins would live in Belpre. He's just confirmed every way that they're supposed to be at Brian. And Brian, I don't know if you know about it, but it's just for years sent out missionaries and leaders, and it's just there's only 750 kids now. It was only 600 when I was there, so it hasn't grown, but it's just really solid. Franklin's in engineering, and this lady's husband was the one from Belpre. Her husband and his professor years ago at UT, they were the first ones to discover the laser. He said, we made nothing off of it because we were like, well, this is interesting, but who in the world would use this? But anyway, he was so impressed with the engineering department at Brian, and the coaches are they're just disciple makers, and they really are loving my kids. And so anyway, I just can't believe all God's done and the fruit that he's bringing, and I just get to be part of it and enjoy it. But so pray for me. I have a hard time with my kids being gone, but every time I leave them, I have to have about 4 days and go, you have 19 others here that need some attention. But I'm just so thankful for all God's done.
Tell them about the latest project, the lodge, and how the Lord's engineering
yeah.
connections with Christian and all that as well.
Or that the meetings are going to be in the lodge. Yeah, because y'all know about the lodge through Mike, and we're almost done. And really, honestly, when he first started building it, I didn't even know how we would use it. I thought once a year we would do sports camp, but I couldn't figure it out. But it was just fun to watch as it gets done, how it's Pastor, even last week, 2 weeks ago, Pastor Christian was talking about forgiveness in church, and he just said, I know some of you got abandoned by most of them have been abandoned by your fathers and your mothers. And he said, it's hard to forgive. And he said, I want to have a retreat, maybe out at Destino. He said, to just work with you about forgiveness, And so he wants to do a father and son thing. And they are so busy in discipleship that I think it's going to be really, really busy. But the fun thing for me is that they're going to start pastor training there. I was like, and it was funny when Christian came out there, he said we both had in the past talked about maybe the Lord's going to use us to do a boot camp for missionaries, to send them out one day. He thought of it before, and I've thought for a long time. We have 120 acres out there, which 100 we haven't used yet, and I always wondered if that's something else we're going to do. So I don't know how big it's going to be. I don't know what God's going to do. But Christian was there the other day, and we were talking. He said, "You think your kids are going to stay in America?" And I said, about as panicked about that as I'm going. I said, they'll go wherever God wants them. They have God on their heart, and they know He called them. And so I said, and he said, what about coming here? And I said, for years, people would come over to Destino, and they'd watch my kids. They're all so smarter than me, and they all are unique. They all have different talents and different personalities. It's fun to watch them all together. And I said, so many times people have said, I think you raised the future leaders of Destino. They're going to run this thing when it becomes this missionary send out and pastor training or whatever. So, and I don't know what God's going to do with any of them, but Pastor Christian said, well, let Brian train him, and then we'll finish off the leadership here, And it was just, I don't know what God's got ahead, but it's really fun to have been part of it from the beginning. And I don't know if I can live 30 more years to watch all the babies grow up, but I'm going to try till the last one. Although we got a call yesterday. I think we're getting a newborn when I get back, so that'll be fun. Because our youngest is 4, so she's not a baby anymore.
So tell them how you raised, how the school is supported. Tell them.
How they get some. Oh, well, it doesn't support them completely, but what we do at the school is it covers their materials and their teacher salaries, almost, I guess, not quite, but we get sponsorships for all the students, and every year it's amazing. This year, how many months ago was I doing that? About 5 months ago, I realized because with COVID, I hadn't worked on it, and we had 120 new students, and I had some graduates, so their sponsors wanted to continue with somebody else, but I needed 105 sponsors. And 4 days later, I had all of them. I couldn't believe it. I was praying, and I go down the thing, and people be on Facebook, and they go, "Oh, I would love to do that." They've seen it announced, I'm sure, but nobody had been asked personally.
And how much is that?
And so it's $60 a month, and the kids write to you. They haven't been as good this week. You got your letter, but they're just now coming out. But we were slow getting their pictures because they can't come to school, so we had to bus them in one grade at a time and take their pictures. So we've been off this year, but the main thing we try to find people is somebody prays for every single kid, so that we have lots of sponsors that say they can't give, but Elizabeth, you're a prayer sponsor, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah, and so they all got the picture of the kid, and they pray for him, because that's the main thing. God obviously doesn't have any trouble with the money, one way or the other. And but I guess thinking at the beginning is if you write a check, you might think to pray for him, if it's, and so that kind of connects to that. But if you just want to be a prayer sponsor for a kid, because this year we have 60 more coming in. Who Kevin wrote me and said he's really working on it in his church, and I didn't even know he knew about it, but he's trying to get a lot of sponsors in Memphis for them. And so anyway,
Because he's got money.
yeah, Pastor Wade, I
brought him down.
yeah, Pastor Wade, he just speaks the truth. He said, I'm bringing this guy Kevin to help me teach in a few weeks. He said, he's a good teacher.
Don't say too much, it's just going to be on Facebook.
Oh, should I
Hey,
not say?
Kevin.
He said,
I brought you down because you got money. I know you do.
he said, I'm bringing this guy Kevin. He can teach good, but mostly I'm bringing him because he's rich. So Pastor Wade's always looking out for me. So anyway.
Amen. I'm going to stop.